Welcome everybody to the first edition of what we're calling right now Real Talk. Today's episode, if you will, is going to be about short-term rentals. Our special and awesome leader and guest on this first chat is Grant Meade. He's our government affairs director. We're lucky to have one. Most associations do not at the local level. And Grant, you've been spectacular, and GMAR's lucky to have you. So,
thank you, I appreciate that.
We're going to be talking about this short-term rental thing, and I have to tell you, I have heard so many different opinions, but there is certainly a center or a heartbeat among the realtor community on the issue.
Yes.
And tell me what's going on now. What are we seeing happening with those?
I think the first thing I'd like to say is this is probably the issue or the advocacy area we get the most questions about. People, especially our members, are not entirely convinced or sure or realize why we are on the side of this that we're on. And short-term rentals, as far as we consider them, are I mean, everyone can go by their own definitions, but where we typically sit is continuous occupancy for under 26 days, or 28 days, my apologies.
Yeah,
but they typically are rented out for longer, and they are, either a full unit or a room, but mainly we're looking at that continuous occupancy as its legal definition for what we do consider a short-term rental. And a lot of people, like I said, they lump them in with vacation rentals, but that's not always what they are.
No, there's many
different
descriptions
uses
and many uses.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been around for a long time.
A long time.
They've been around longer than we have the name for them. And
Right.
That's something to think about. If you look at different areas of our state, people have been traveling and using houses or condos as a way on their vacations or to do business for decades.
Right.
And it's part of a lot of people's history as they've traveled around Michigan and around the country. Some states have done a great job at figuring out how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We're past our infancy, but we're into policy, I think,
Yes.
now, and that's where we're really struggling to make sure that everybody gets a seat at the table, but that any private property right that is given is not taken away
Right.
through this.
Right, and that's kind of the main thing where we see a lot of conflict with this issue, not only with municipalities and governments in general, but a lot of members of the public don't exactly understand why this is a private property right and what
Sure.
this means.
Sure.
And I think that the biggest thing that we typically come down on with this is that there's a massive implication on how most of this legislation is written that can impact post-closing occupancy.
Sure, that's a great point. We think of our occupancy situation when a buyer buys a home. A seller may ask for a time after closing to stay in the home, at which time they have already closed and gotten their money, but they're paying a daily rate, sometimes free in a competitive market, but they're able to stay post-closing in the home, whether it be for 15 days, 30 days. We've used this as part of our changing of ownership for, again, 50 plus years.
Yeah.
Is that considered a short-term rental? If we aren't careful on letting the policy come through, it could actually affect on how we do transactions, close transactions, and when they move. There are areas of this country and in other countries where you have to be out at closing. There is no other option, and we don't want that. We don't think it's right for Michigan from a consumer standpoint or our realtor family.
Correct. No, and it's a big implication, especially in markets, I think, whether it's a hot market or a cold market, whatever can make the difference in the sale or the purchase is really what we want to protect, I think, at the advocacy level. Your ability to make your own contracts.
Well, on that, and the ability and the freedom to use your property reasonably, tell us some things that are going on. Tell us what we're seeing out there. Are there any examples or any highlights that you want to look at?
Well,
and there's a
lot. The short-term rentals have kind of become the boogeyman of the housing crisis. They are the core center fault of why we have no available housing, which is not true. It's an inventory problem.
It's an easy target to use, as that's the reason.
Exactly. So what you see typically is a lot of areas that are historically vacation areas dealing with this a lot. Traverse City is definitely one of them. Traverse City has an issue, a massive issue with affordable housing in and around the city there, and They've had their own issues with the tax equality between them and hotels, but basically Traverse City has not handled any of this in a correct fashion. They've tried to outlaw them, they've tried to ban them, they've tried to highly restrict where they can go, and they are still short on housing. If you ban these, you're opening up maybe 30 units, 40 units, depending on where you're at.
Yeah, it isn't measurable. To separate it out, workforce housing is an important issue all over the state of Michigan,
Very
and probably all over the country. We need people to be able to live and work in the same communities generally, and that's really tough with the shortage of homes, this scarcity that we're dealing with. And we can't attack an issue as it exists for a certain small amount of time. We have to make sure the policies that are put together last for all different markets that we've seen in our state. I think that Traverse City has a challenge. I think that if you look at the vacation rentals and those that are using their home, sometimes fully as an investment, and others to keep that home in the family and be able to afford the taxes, that there are reasons that go beyond availability and shortage and have to do with the ability to have your private property continue to be with you and in your family. And what I mean by that is this money is being used in many instances to pay taxes, pay the upkeep, and allow this to transfer to the next generation as opposed to having to sell it. So there's a useful purpose. How many times have you gone on a vacation or into an area and it was all booked, you couldn't find any place to go? To me, the toothpaste is out of the tube. We just have to find a way where there's fairness. I firmly believe that short-term rentals should be, our policies should be, and has been, as we've written it from Michigan down, regulate it, tax it fairly, not more or less than you would staying in any other hotel or equivalent.
Long-term accommodation.
But don't ban it through zoning. This is something we need, and they fit into our communities. They have, there's already laws and statutes on the books that will cover a lot of the things that people are worried about. So beyond the shock value, they've been there. This is nothing new. It has a recent new name because it's being used and condensed on dashboards all over the country. Has turned this into an issue that we talk about more, but it's always been there. We have to be careful that we do not diminish private property rights while we try to regulate short-term rentals.
This has become a major issue, mainly because of the technology behind it. Just like Uber and Lyft, this is a big point of discussion because of Airbnb and websites like VRBO.
It's been capitalized.
But they've, like you said, they've been around in Michigan for a long time, and typically what we see too, when there is a lot of, dare I say, ruckus around short-term rentals.
I like ruckus.
Ruckus is a good word.
Ruckus.
Around short-term rentals, it typically actually devolves into something around code enforcement. A lot of the issues we hear are stuff like trash or parking or noise or disruptive conduct, which I don't know about you, John, but I've read a lot of city codes in my time here, and let's just say they're pretty well covered against all that.
It's been covered since 1940 or 1950 in most of these communities, and updated and regulated. We know that we see if you don't pick up your trash, there's already an ordinance for it. If you have exceeded your parking limit and are parking on streets, there's ordinances on how you can do that. Noise ordinances have been around forever. These are not new issues. We only need to look back and see that it's already codified.
Exactly, and all the concerns that typically come out of these code violations, where residents of an area feel they may not be able to accurately, direct the punishment or the ticket to the proper authorities. Or the proper person. That's where licensing and registration comes from. We've seen several municipalities in the area already almost mirror what you see with a lot of long-term rentals.
Yes, and basically you get registered, you get inspected. These are all part of regulating short-term rentals as opposed to banning them. And again, but there's been some issues about taxation. I know the hotels have piped in and maybe to an extent, rightly so, saying, how about these taxes? When someone stays in our hotel, we're charging these and paying them. Shouldn't there be something equal? And we're seeing that there are ways to do that. If anybody's booked a Airbnb, I don't know, let's say Florida, you go on there and you pay all the Florida taxes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Believe me, that price you pay, it could be more.
Price per night,
So
yeah.
we have ways to solve these
Yes.
problems. We cannot ban them. It's
No.
part of our just inherent Michigander ways of doing things. But we can regulate, we can tax,
Yeah.
just don't ban.
Well, John, I have a question for you then.
All right?
Regardless, are short-term rentals going to be around in the foreseeable future? Whether or not they are legal or illegal, are they going to be around?
This is the short and just solid answer is yes. Back to the toothpaste is already out of the tube. A couple things. Right now, short-term rentals, and I don't want to make this about resort. Short-term rentals are everywhere.
Yeah.
We're still a land of auto and
Yes.
manufacturing. And there are engineers and workers that are coming in on short-term projects who are using short-term rentals all across the state, in Metro Detroit, in Grand Rapids, in Lansing, to serve a workforce purpose. So I don't want to lose sight of that. There's a lot more going on than just resort. And to that end, if we regulate it comprehensively without making it go away legally, we're far better off than having an underground Airbnb market or short-term rental.
Yeah.
We're gonna see, that we have a choice here. We can do something that's fair without diminishing private property rights, back to regulate and tax, register, but not stop permitting it.
Yeah.
It's just gonna go underground and people are gonna find a way around it
Yeah.
because the need exceeds the screaming for policy.
Right.
So to me, I'm gonna equate it to what Michigan did, better or worse, with the marijuana industry.
Yeah.
And that is, it was going on, it was happening, it was unregulated, potentially unsafe, it was potentially, well, it was guaranteed not to raise any tax revenue. I mean, let's face it, that had a lot to do with that.
I don't know many drug dealers that pay their taxes.
No, I don't. I mean, if there's any out there, please let us know.
My
how you
email
can
will be
find
with
us.
us.
Email Grant. My thought is that we saw that it was better to regulate and allow than to completely destroy an industry that's been around for 75 years and push it underground.
Yeah.
And with technology and with everything going on, I don't expect short-term rentals to go away. I would rather have them legal, codified, registered, and taxed at an equal basis than I will have it to go underground where everybody's going on to special websites to rent their houses. So
Yeah.
I don't want to think that that's the way that it's going to go. But I think there's a good leadership at Lansing and on the local level that they're going to look past that and find something that's comprehensive and fair.
I think so. I definitely agree. I think we're going to have an equitable solution, I believe.
Eventually.
Eventually. I think it's just the noise before we get there. It could be quite a bit. We might see a lot of issues. We've seen people ban them already, but here at GMAR, I think we have 3 technical centers within 30 minutes. I'm sure that between that and all the automotive offices around here, the amount of things you can do in Detroit, it's a mistake to ban them in the Metro Detroit area.
And the great thing here at GMAR and through the help of Michigan Realtors, we have developed a policy so we can go into the local municipalities and help them craft a short-term rental policy that's fair, that tackles all the issues that we talked about in our chat today.
Yeah, no, I think going forward, I think the future for short-term rentals is going to be, I mean, again, like you said, I don't know how long it's going to take us to get there, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a pretty fair system, and we're going to see that they're going to be well balanced between their uses and the need for them, I guess you could say. I mean, you're already seeing it, like you said, with Florida. The amount of them greatly outweighs the need for them.
Sure, and what we're gonna see here is that we're gonna be on a path that is gonna promote private property rights at the center of this, and the ability for people to use their property within reason, and short-term rentals is within reason and can be governed, but it should never be banned.
Never be banned.
And we're here for the realtors and the community we serve.
Thank you for joining us for our first episode of Real Talk. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.